Welcome to our channel. It is important that you watch this video in its entirety. Nothing less than your future is at stake. We're going on a trip through time and across the globe to examine an evil beast that just refuses to die. Socialism. Now you might be thinking, wait, socialism sounds lovely. Free money, free goods. Everyone's happy, we all sing Kumbaya. And to that I say, my friend, you've been hitting the propaganda a little too hard. Let's examine some instances where socialism led to disasters. First stop, the USSR, the land of vodka, bears wearing hats, and catastrophic economic failure. A place where the dream of a worker's paradise turned into a nightmare of endless bread lines and empty store shelves. See, the Soviets loved them some centralized planning. They believed that a few people at the top could make all the right decisions for everyone else. The government decided who made what, how much, and for whom. They thought this would create a perfectly balanced economy, free from the chaos of the free market. Sounds efficient, right? Well, imagine trying to knit a sweater while wearing oven mitts made of lead. That's how cumbersome and ineffective the Soviet system was. That's the Soviet economy in a nutshell. Instead of prosperity, it brought scarcity and inefficiency. Collectivized farming, where they took land from private owners and gave it to the state, was meant to boost agricultural production. The idea was to pool resources and labor to create a more efficient agricultural system. It was meant to boost agricultural production. But the reality was far different from the theory. Instead, it led to widespread famine. The lack of personal ownership and motivation led to poor productivity and disastrous food shortages. Turns out, people work better when they have a personal stake in the outcome. Who knew? The grand experiment of collectivization showed that without personal incentives, even the best-laid plans can fail miserably.
Next, Venezuela. You know, the country sitting on more oil reserves than a teenager's forehead. You'd think they'd be rolling in dollars, but alas, socialism struck again. During the time of Hugo Chavez, nationalization was the name of the game here. Oil? Nationalized. Factories? You guessed it. Nationalized. Problem is, running a successful business requires a tad more expertise than, say, microwaving a burrito. Throw in some unsustainable welfare programs that made people dependent on the government, and you've got yourself a recipe for hyperinflation so bad, you could use a stack of cash to wallpaper your house.
Hold on to your hats, folks, because we're heading to Zimbabwe. This is a country with a rich history and a complex present. Once upon a time, this country was the breadbasket of Africa. Its fertile lands produced enough food to feed not just its own people, but also to export to neighboring countries. Then came the land redistribution program, initiated by Robert Mugabe's government. The idea was to correct historical injustices by redistributing land, which is just an euphemism for daylight robbery. They stole land from white commercial farmers and gave it to black Zimbabweans. Now this is what socialism is all about: stealing your hard-earned money or land or property and doling it out to those who never had to work for it. Seizing land from experienced farmers and handing it over to people with little to no training in agriculture, that's like one of the most heinous and stupid things to do. The results were predictably disastrous. The new landowners lacked the skills and resources to maintain the productivity of the farms. The once thriving farms turned into barren fields, and food shortages became rampant. The economy, heavily reliant on agriculture, went into a tailspin. Unsurprisingly, the economy went into freefall, and Zimbabwe became a cautionary tale of how stupidity masquerading as generosity often paves the road to economic hell. The country, once a symbol of prosperity, now struggles with hyperinflation, unemployment, and widespread poverty. Thanks, socialism.
Now let's take a peek behind the curtain of North Korea, shall we? This is a country run by a dictator with a haircut that could rival a startled poodle and an economic system to match. Juche, their brand of self-reliance, sounds great on paper. But again, it's an euphemism for infringing on private property rights. In reality, it's led to isolation, chronic shortages, and a level of government control that would make even George Orwell cringe. Want to choose your own career? Too bad. You can't even cut your hair freely. The state decides for you. Instead of the promised utopia, the centralized, state-controlled economic structure has led to inefficiencies, lack of innovation, and widespread poverty among its population.
Next stop, Cuba, land of cigars, classic cars, and well, not much else. After the leftist revolution, Fidel Castro nationalized pretty much everything. Property rights, gone. Private businesses, gone. The result? An economy stuck in a time warp with rationing shortages and a heavy reliance on the now defunct Soviet Union. They grapple now with scarcity of resources and reliance on outdated infrastructure. Thus, living in a socialist time capsule isn't exactly progress, is it? Who would have thought? Let's hop over to Germany, shall we? Specifically East Germany, a place that became synonymous with division and control. The Berlin Wall wasn't just a physical barrier, it was a symbol of the ideological divide that split not only a city but also families and friends. East Germany, the land of the Stasi, the Berlin Wall, and, you guessed it, economic stagnation. The Stasi, East Germany's secret police, kept a watchful eye on everyone, creating an atmosphere of fear and mistrust. The Berlin Wall stood as a stark reminder of the lengths to which a regime would go to keep its people from fleeing to freedom. Central planning reared its ugly head once again, with the government dictating every aspect of the economy. From what could be produced to how much it would cost, the state had its hands in everything. This top-down approach stifled innovation and led to inefficiencies that crippled the economy. The result? A chronic shortage of basic goods, a thriving black market, and an insatiable desire for the freedoms and prosperity enjoyed by their Western counterparts. People would queue for hours just to get their hands on everyday items like bread and milk. The black market became a lifeline for many, offering goods that were otherwise impossible to find. Treating citizens as incapable, useless folks undermines progress, leading to economic instability. West Germany prospered while East Germany stagnated due to this stark contrast in governance. Now, let's head down to Argentina, a country known for its passionate tango, delicious food, and a long, tumultuous tryst with economic instability. Nationalization and wasteful welfare programs were the tango partners in this case also, leading to runaway inflation, a ballooning deficit, and a government that seemed to have two left feet when it came to managing the economy. During Argentina's experiment with socialism known as the Dirty War from 1976 to 1983, approximately 10,000 to 30,000 people were killed or disappeared. This period was marked by severe human rights violations, including forced disappearances, torture, and executions carried out by the military junta in power at the time. Thanks, leftists. Don't forget Chile, where we'll revisit the short-lived presidency of Salvador Allende. Allende, a self-proclaimed socialist, embarked on a whirlwind tour of nationalization, price control, and land redistribution. You know what redistribution means, right? It seems the socialists love euphemisms as they help them to defraud their favorite people, whom they call as useful idiots. Anyways, can you guess the result? Yes, economic chaos, shortages, and an unstable political climate that led to an end to democracy. It's a clear example of how even the most well-intentioned socialist policies can backfire spectacularly.
Now, let's venture into the former Yugoslavia, a country that tried to forge its own path with a unique brand of market socialism. The idea was to give workers more control over the means of production. Sounds good, right? Well, in fact, it led to inefficiencies, economic disparities between republics, and a resurgence of ethnic tensions that ultimately broke the country apart. Thanks, socialism.
Last stop on our socialist world tour, Greece. The birthplace of democracy, philosophy, and more recently, a debt crisis so large it could make even the most stoic philosopher weep into their toga. Years of wasteful welfare programs, thriftlessness by the government, and an unbalanced tax policy created an economic house of cards that came crashing down in 2010. It's a stark reminder that even in a developed country, socialist policies can have dire consequences. Lesser-known countries like Albania, Ethiopia, and Angola also face significant economic hardship and decline due to the same socialist policies. You'll have to be blind to not see the pattern here. As we've seen, socialism's heinous track record speaks for itself. How difficult is it to understand that governments are just not meant to run charities or businesses? It's a history replete with economic disasters. Thanks for watching, and remember to think critically.